theatercore. Without even explaining what that term means, I feel like it's pretty easy to get the idea. Theatercore, theater choir, theater kid, overly dramatic, theatrical, sometimes annoying, and just overall very extra. I'm fairly sure that it was coined by a former music reviewer who shall not be named, but like any internet term, no matter how made up it is, to be coined into a term means it's got to be resonating with people in some kind of way, and no one else is diving into these made up internet genres, so it looks like it's up to me to beg the question, what is theatercore?
Do you want a banana? This banana for you.
My relationship with theatercore is a little weird because technically it doesn't exist, at least not in the indie or pop music kind of way. But when I heard the term for the first time, I immediately knew what it makes me think of and how I personally feel about it. It's like when someone says goblin core or cottage core, you don't really need a definition, you just kind of get it, which is good because in looking up this genre, not a lot comes up besides a couple videos and some Reddit threads. So if I can't depend on my favorite book for an official definition, I guess that leaves it up to me to invent one. Don't worry, I take this stuff very seriously. So the best way I like to dig into a genre that doesn't have a solid definition is to first break apart some of the key components and then give examples. And I believe that for the most part, there are three main components to theatercore. Narrative driven. One of the first common threads you'll notice is the lyrical content. The purpose and direction of the writing is a lot different than most writing techniques you'll see. A lot of people don't register this until you look for it, but a lot of songs are written in a way that's either directly addressing someone, you left me in the cold, all alone, or more indirectly, he, she, they left me in the cold, all alone. Theatercore, on the other hand, is written in a very narrative-driven way, more so describing a scene, painting a picture. Instead of just telling you how they feel, they kind of drop you into a moment. Setting, characters, conflict, all playing out like a scene change in a musical.
What a shame the poor groom's bride is a whore.
You're not really relating to the music, you're watching someone's emotional chaos unfold like it's Act 2 of Hamilton. Emotional swells. I feel like ChatGPT using the word swell, but there's not really another word for it. It almost feels like the emotions are building and building up as they create this elaborate scene in your head, and then it just all comes on like a wave. It will feel as dramatic as possible. This is the most heart-shattering and devastating moment of this character's life, only to dip right back down afterwards. It's almost like the musical equivalent of a spotlight hitting the center stage and then fading to black. This is where it can sometimes try so hard to be dramatic that they completely throw away the notion that, sometimes less is more. Theatrical vocals. Probably the most prominent aspect of this genre, and the one that I usually notice the quickest. These are vocals that are performed in such a way that it feels like almost a dramatization of someone else's emotions, a sort of character that's being played instead of their actual natural singing voice. This is the main thing that'll drive me away personally, because it tends to feel like someone reading off a script more than anything, and while that delivery can work great in theater, in recorded music, it can sometimes feel too polished and scripted, almost like you're listening to a monologue instead of a song. But now that we've dug into a bit of the anatomy of theatercore, in order to really understand the genre, we gotta look at some examples. Panic at the Disco was one of the first times I remember experiencing this phenomenon. I heard them and I just knew there was something about the singing, the aesthetic, just the sound of it all that I did not enjoy. It felt almost overdone, inauthentic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I know actors aren't really their characters most of the time, but I personally tend to gravitate towards authenticity in music. And while I'm not saying that this band or any of the other ones that I talk about today are not being their authentic, true selves, it just doesn't sound like it. Panic's early work, especially the A Fever You Can't Sweat Out era, is some of their most theatercore sounding stuff. Vaudeville, piano, dramatic lyrics, vocal switch-ups that feel like costume changes. Even their later radio pop sound kept a lot of that over-polished, perform into the back row kind of energy. But that said, despite the name Panic at the Disco literally sounding like a Broadway play, they are still one of the least egregious bands that I'm going to talk about. Will Wood is a name that I have seen a lot, but have never heard, and after looking into him, I see why. His music is as theatrical and unpredictable as it gets, just full of this wacky energy and character-driven performances. Sometimes sounding straight out of Beetlejuice. His stuff reminds me a lot of that one Five Nights at Freddy's song, which I haven't included that band in this video, but they're probably theatercore too. He also has a crazy track record of band names, the most popular one being the Tapeworms, but he was also in A Verbal Equinox, Jamface, and the Stereosexuals, a name I will not be getting out of my head anytime soon. Listening to Will Wood's music is like watching one of those one-man bands, but he's also somehow able to switch costumes mid-song. A track might open up with a ragtime piano, go into some cabaret, and then explode into a frantic circus-like chaos. It's really theatercore in its purest form. Genre hopping, emotionally maximalist, and not afraid to be completely absurd if it serves the direction he's going for. God, it's a lot of talking. I'm getting a little thirsty.
Thirsty Thursday.
AJR as a band really puzzles me. They have made some legitimately terrible music. But I've also seen some of their stuff exhibit a crazy amount of creativity that no matter how it sounds, I have to respect. They proudly claim that Broadway is their biggest influence.
The music is almost like the score to the show, or the Broadway show that is our tour.
Which explains the dramatic flair and sometimes cringy theatrics. Their songs tend to swing between more pop-oriented hooks and theatrical overacting.
Man, I'm up to something.
Which makes me wonder if they're trying to write pop songs or practice for the local theater. In a way, AJR is the perfect ambassador of theatercore, just self-aware enough to be tolerable, but creative enough to really show off their talents. But like any real or made-up genre, there are bands that completely embody the sound, and ones that are kinda on the outskirts, bleeding into other genres and sounds, but taking bits of it on the way. And that goes into a really interesting discovery I made when doing all the research for this video, and that is the connection between theatercore and commercial pop music. That indescribable, inauthentic corniness you'll hear in a lot of hugely successful pop artists, the overly perfect crescendos, big emotional payoffs that feel manufactured rather than earned. Yeah, that's theatercore DNA right there. From Imagine Dragons to Benson Boone, that one god-awful Ordinary song. The overarching essence of forced emotions is rooted in the same DNA that makes theatercore so distinct. Even stuff like Olivia Rodrigo will sometimes have elements of this in her songs, you know, delivering a monologue rather than instinctually speaking from the heart.
I see the parties and diamonds sometimes when I close my eyes.
You could even go as far back as Bohemian Rhapsody.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family.
At the very tippy top of the theatercore pyramid. Or the bottom. Actually, I don't know how that works. And whether you find that stuff charming or unbearable probably depends on how much of a theater kid you were. So while theatercore might be another made-up internet genre, it does have a lot more purpose than some of those broad, trendy terms like coworker music or headphone music. Those ones are stupid. Well, I don't know why anybody would make videos on those. To me, it's a fascinating little pocket of music culture, one that overlaps with pop, indie, Broadway, while never fully belonging to any of that. It's music that's less concerned about being relatable and more about putting on a show. And whether you think that's brilliant or cringy, you can't deny that it has lodged itself into its own special little corner of pop culture. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments of any other big theatercore bands that I miss. If there's another made-up genre you want me to cover, I think dadcore could be fun. And join the Discord if you want to talk about things with other people that are also in my Discord. I do more surface level short reviews of genres in my genre-phobic series, and if you want to request the genre for that and also just support the channel, feel free to join the Patreon. But if you like the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you really like the video, hit the freaking subscribe button. Okay, bye.